Hello, we're live. And in today's live video, we're going to answer a few important questions, which are the following. I've made some notes for myself. I get asked these questions a lot, and I see how students struggle with these. Question number one that we're going to try to answer in this live video is, why is it that you cannot remember words? When you sit down to learn words, or when you know that you need to learn a lot of new English words, you probably create lists for yourself, lists of words and phrases that you're supposed to learn. So why is it that you cannot remember them? Why is it that you struggle memorizing them? Why is it that you look at your list and you think that you know them, or you think that you've learned them, or you think that you've done a good job? You look at those again tomorrow or a week from today, and you can't remember these words, and you know that you haven't learned them. You haven't memorized anything. So why does this happen? That's going to be question number one. Question number two that we're going to try to answer in this live video is connected with question one. We're going to tackle three questions, and all of them are interconnected. The second question is, why do you struggle reading fiction books or books in English? Because a lot of people tell me that it's a nightmare. It feels like a lot of effort. And they would like to read faster, but they can't because it takes so much conscious effort and so much time to look and to look at every word and to check every word in the dictionary, because they feel like they cannot move on without checking every single word. And if they skip the words that they don't know, and if they stop checking every single word, it feels like they're not applying enough effort. So how do you read books, and why do you struggle reading books in English? Because you think that you don't know every single word, and it's going to take forever to read a book that is, let's say, 200 or 300 pages long. And the third question is, why do you worry so much that you can't remember the words on your list? As I said, most people make lists of words and phrases, and they want to learn, they want to acquire those phrases, they want to memorize them, they want to be able to use them spontaneously in their conversations and make zero mistakes. And they work with those huge lists, failing to internalize them, to memorize them, to work, to deal with them. And again, it feels like a lot of effort. So why are these things happening? That's going to be, that's the topic for this live video. That's what we're going to talk about. I have been listening to a book by Josh Waitzkin, The Art of Learning, and I highly recommend you get this book, listen to it, read it. I have both the digital version and the audiobook. And this book answers a lot of my questions. I wouldn't even say that it answers a lot of my questions, but it confirms a lot of the things that I have known for myself. It gives me the explanation for the things that I've experienced myself. It explains my practical experience, because everything he talks about in this book has been my reality for many, many years. And it's very, I don't want to say the word nice, because that would be an understatement, but it's such a relief to know that someone else has been through it, and someone else actually took the time and applied and put in the effort to systematize this knowledge and to structure it for other people. However, I do understand that for someone who hasn't experienced those things, his language is not very clear. Because I gave this book to some of my students, and they told me, I don't understand it. I think he's just talented. And why do I like this book? Because this guy talks about the art of learning. He is 8 times U.S. chess champion, I believe. Then he won a few world championships in push hands. Well, first he studied chess. He became a national champion. Then he started learning martial arts. Now he learns foiling. And every skill that he learns, he wants to achieve mastery, and he manages to achieve mastery in everything he does. And he figured out that he's just good at learning, so he talks about the art of learning in his book. I'm going to talk about one principle that I relate so much I can relate to it a lot. It resonates a lot with me. And I see that a lot of people struggle with this. So, we're going to talk about your conscious mind and unconscious mind. Let's start with the difference between attentiveness and focus. If you have been following my work, you know that I talk about the system of 9 essential skills that are necessary to achieve native-like fluency. And the first skill on our list is attentiveness. However, when I start talking about attentiveness, a lot of people don't really understand what I mean. When I tell them that we need to do the exercise of listening to your own voice so that you can become aware of how you speak and so that you learn to hear yourself, again, a lot of people don't really understand what I mean, and it only comes with a lot of practice. There is a difference between being attentive and developing the skill of attentiveness and focus. Let's talk about it. A lot of people think that they have to focus. And this is what they do when they sit down to learn words. They want to focus on every single word, of course consciously, and they want to memorize every single word, and they want to remember it, and they want to understand it. But you have to understand how the brain works, and you have to understand that our conscious mind works a lot better if we deal with little information. What most people try to do is they try to give their conscious mind too much information, and our conscious mind is simply unable to deal with so much information. What does that mean? Let me give you a practical example. When you focus on something, it means you choose to pay attention to one thing and ignore all the other things. So when you sit down to focus on your exercise, you choose to do this exercise, and you choose to not look at social media. You choose not to answer your phones. You choose to leave your phone in a different room, for example. When you choose to focus on your exercise, be it an English exercise or a physical exercise, you choose to ignore all the other things. Deliberate focus is when you give your focused attention to one thing. Attentiveness is different. When you want to learn something or when you want to understand something, yes, you need focus. When you do exercises, especially when it comes to very specific exercises where you train your focus, you want to be focused. However, when you speak spontaneously, you want to be attentive. What is attentiveness? Attentiveness is what I call the state of mind that feels like a very relaxed focus. It means that you are relaxed but focused. You see everything that's in front of you, and you can study the information, the people, the letters, the text that you see, or that the things that you experience with precision. You can give it your attention. You can see the details of everything. At the same time, your peripheral vision works very well as too. You are aware and you are mindful of your surroundings. You maintain this mindfulness, even though you might be focused on something in front of you. For example, you might be focused on your conversation partner and what it is that they're trying to tell you. Maybe they're trying to negotiate the terms of the contract, and you're very attentive, you're listening to them. However, you're not focused on understanding every single word that they are telling you. The problem that people experience and why people find it so hard to listen to native speakers or to read books written by native speakers is that they give every word that they see or hear their focused attention. They hear a word and they start thinking about this word. What is the translation of this word? What does this word mean? Have I seen this word before? Oh, damn it, I know that I've heard this word before. What does it mean? I forgot. So they're stuck thinking about this one word, but the person keeps talking. And while you're thinking about this word, you're losing the conversation. You're not attentive, you're focused. How do we achieve this mental state of relaxed focus? It's when you delegate the work of the conscious mind to the unconscious mind. That's what we want to achieve. When you do the exercise of listening to your own voice, you practice the same. Because when I am, let's say right now I'm talking to you. As I'm talking to you, I hear every word that I say. At the same time, I see myself. At the same time, I'm mindful of my surroundings. And I can repeat word by word everything that I said 5 seconds ago. I can repeat word by word every word that I said 5 seconds ago. I am very mindful in everything that's going on. And which is more, it feels like the words I am saying sound in slow motion. I continuously do the synchronization exercise. If you watch the last reel that I posted on my profile, you saw me talk about this triangle where you're supposed to continuously synchronize the meaning, the sound, and the image. The sound is what I hear when I listen to my voice. The meaning is what I understand. I understand what I want to say. And the image is the spelling. So when I speak, the experience that I'm going through, if I can explain it to you, it feels like I can see the words that I'm saying imprinted on an imaginary wall in front of me. It feels like I can see every word that I say written down on an imaginary wall in front of me. And if I am focused on every single word, I will simply have no time to do that. But because my mind is relaxed and focused at the same time, it feels like everything I'm doing, well, everything feels like in slow motion. It feels like when I blink, or when another person says a word or blinks, it takes them a few seconds to do so, even though in reality, in objective reality, it happens a lot quicker. But because I've internalized those skills, I can give the words that people say and the eye movement that I see on the person's face and the mimics, I can give a lot more conscious effort to those, a lot more conscious attention to those details, and I can see more by focusing on less, because my unconscious is doing the rest. Everything that is happening in the periphery, my unconscious mind is responsible for that. And I'm consciously focusing on, let's say, the terms of the contract, or the body language of the person in front of me, or their accent, or the words that they're saying, because it's very important for me to understand the words that they're saying. So what you do is you shift the primary role from the conscious to the unconscious without losing the precision that the conscious mind can do. If I say it in the words of Josh Waitzkin, he says what happens is the subtle reintegration of the conscious mind into a free-flowing unconscious process. And this is true. It becomes a free-flowing unconscious process. And you suddenly feel that you have a lot of time, because everything is happening kinda in slow motion. And you have time to hear yourself, because this mental state can be best characterized as the state of deep presence. And you have the time to hear yourself, to see and analyze your own body language, especially when you talk in front of a camera. You have the time to see, listen, understand, and remember the words that a person in front of you is saying. You have the time to pay attention to their emotional state. You have the time to analyze what they're saying. You have the time to read between the lines, because you can hear the tone of voice, the intonations, you can understand the attitude, and you have the time to do that, because you're not fixated on every single word that they say, and you're not trying to remember what every single word means. And you have the time to analyze where this conversation is going, and if you notice that it's going in the wrong direction, you can always steer the conversation in the direction that you need it to go. This is attentiveness. And you need to practice attentiveness all the time. We practice attentiveness when we pay attention to how we speak. So we want to be attentive to ourselves. How do we speak? Why do we choose these words? How do we stress words? Are we being clear? Do we speak in complete sentences, or do we speak in fragments? Do we actually check understanding, or do we just say whatever comes to mind without bothering if we are making sense? We want to be very attentive to ourselves. At the same time, we want to practice attentiveness to native speakers. How do native speakers say what we want to experience or what we want to express, so that you can compare. Oh, they say it that way, but I always use a different word to explain the same concept. So maybe it makes sense for me to learn from them instead of trying to make them understand what I mean. You know? You can notice these things when you become attentive and not when you become focused. You cannot be focused 24/7. This is not how our brain functions. You need to learn how to focus, how to give something your focused attention. At the same time, you need to learn how to deliberately give something your divided attention so that you can pay attention to a lot of things at the same time. It's not like divided attention is bad and focused attention is good. You need to be able to do both, and you need to know when you need to do what. So that's the main difference between focus and attentiveness. I hope I'm making sense. If I'm not making sense, you can ask questions in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. So when you have done something enough, you start processing the information with your unconscious mind, because you've done it so many times that now you need to apply a lot less conscious effort to see a lot more and to see the relationships and the relations between different concepts and things. I'm looking at my notes here. There was something else that I want to say. There was another good example that I like here about how our conscious and unconscious works. Josh Waitzkin in his book compares the mind of an expert and a grandmaster. Everybody wants to be an expert today, especially on Instagram. But I've always been interested in mastery. I don't want to be an expert. It's not enough for me. Native-like fluency to me is mastery. So if I learn to eat better, I want to make sure that I don't just become an expert in nutrition. I want to make sure that I do the best I can for my body and for my optimal performance, for the best performance, so that I perform the best I can perform on a mental, physical, and emotional level, because food and everything we intake influences us a lot, and I need to perform at my best, because I need to do a lot of things every day, and I need to support myself with good nutrition. So he talks about the difference between being very good and being great, between an expert and a master. A master is somebody, well, according to Josh Waitzkin, is somebody who can see more by looking at less. If you compare the mind of, let's say, an expert chess player and a grandmaster, somebody who is God in the world of chess, very few people understand that an expert will look at every little detail, at every little chess piece, trying to figure out what every chess piece means and what it can do. And a master looks at less consciously, meaning an expert gives their conscious attention to a lot more things and a lot more details, but they're not able to see as much as the master. And the master will, or a master will, pay conscious attention to a lot fewer things, but they're going to be able to see a lot more. These people and these minds live in absolutely parallel realities. And this applies to a lot of language learners. Think about it. When you read a book, you open the first page of To Kill a Mockingbird. It's a very famous fiction book. And you start reading the first page. And what a language learner will do is somebody who is not used to reading a lot of books, somebody who is not used to reading fiction books, what they will do is they will give their conscious attention to every word. What does this word mean? 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 And Josh Waitzkin compares this to studying chess. If you have ever played chess, you can imagine a chessboard, and you know that there are 32 pieces, right, on the chessboard. And if you want to learn to understand how every chess piece works, you will have to do the following. You will have to study each of them in detail. Okay, this is a pawn, this is what it can do. This is a queen, this is what it can do. This is a king, this is a bishop, this is a knight. And by piece number 5, my mind is already tired, because we cannot take so much information in and keep our attention focused for so long. We just can't do this. And when you want to look at every single word on on the page of a fiction book that you're looking at, you're doing the same thing. You're trying to intake a lot of information, and you're trying your best to maintain the information you have just received about that word. But you have to move on to a new word. Here's another new word, and you have to do it all over again. You have to look it up in the dictionary, listen to it, read the definition, maybe look up the translation. And while you're busy trying to understand this word, you already forgot the previous word, and you already forgot the word that you looked at 10 words ago. You simply forgot. And it's just not sustainable. It's not a sustainable strategy. Or for example, another example that just comes to mind, if you're somebody who wants to understand the tarot cards, right? And let's say maybe you use tarot cards to understand your intuition. There are 78 of them. And what I noticed is that somebody who wants to understand how every card works and what every card means, and especially what the cards mean together, they have to look at every card, and there are 78 of them, and study the meaning of each. And by card number 5, they're already tired, and they say, okay, today I'm going to learn 5, tomorrow I'm going to learn 5 more. And tomorrow when they look at the cards, the new cards that they want to learn to understand, they already forgot what the 5 they looked at yesterday meant. And when they look at them together, they are lost because they cannot understand the relationships between the cards. And the same happens to people who try to understand the relationships between the words that they're looking at. When you give every word your conscious attention, you're focused on understanding every single word, and you're losing the connections between the words. The trick is to see more by looking at less. This is where you want to be headed. This is what you want to teach yourself to do. What a master does, what happens in the mind of a master when he or she looks at one word, let's say. I look at one word, or I hear one sentence, or I see something, and I immediately see the relations between the thing that I see and everything that I have in my experience, everything that I have in my subconscious. I see those relations, and I can make conclusions, and I can make decisions a lot faster. I'm consciously focused on less, but I see a lot more. And I'm less tired, even though I deal with huge amounts of information, but I'm tired less. I feel less tired than the person who is trying to give their conscious attention to every single word, and they're trying to do their best. Especially if you are somebody who tries to memorize long lists of words, you will always feel tired and exhausted, and you will always feel like this was a waste of time because you went through this long list. Maybe you did those flashcards, maybe you translated every word, maybe you tried to play this game where you wrote these 2 words in 2 columns, the English words on the left, the translation on the right, and then you cover the right and you try to memorize the words. You cover the left column and you try to memorize the words or the translation of the words. You can't play this game forever because it yields no results. You will remember the words today. Maybe you're going to remember them tomorrow as well. But a week from today, you're going to lose half of it. And a month from today, you're going to lose all of it. Unfortunately, this is how our mind works, and you have to understand it so that you don't make this mistake over and over again. What separates a master from an expert is that once you have shifted the primary task to the unconscious, and once you have cultivated that skill of being attentive, the skill of being deeply present, being in this mental state of relaxed focus, what happens is that your navigational system works a lot better. So when you look at a word or at a complexity or at a situation, and you understand the complexity of the situation, you're looking at it and you have a highly evolved navigational system. You know how to deal with it. You know how to navigate this information. And an expert doesn't have this. An expert can see only this word, and he or she is trying to figure out what this specific word means. He or she does not see the relations. he or she doesn't see all the other information that relates to this word because they have no experience and they don't even understand what relations and relationships are possible. Let me close the window real quick and I'll be right back. So I'm in the hotel here and it's kind of cold. So I'm back. Now, how does this apply to us and how can we use this information to learn English better? The first thing that I want to say is that we want to aim at internalizing information, not learning about it, not memorizing it, not acquiring it, but internalizing information. What does it mean to internalize something? When you have internalized something, it becomes unconsciously accessible. It means you stop thinking about it. You don't really know how you know it and where you know it from. You just know it. And because you know it, you need to apply zero conscious effort to do so. You don't really think about how you do it. You just know how to do it because you have put in the effort to internalize it. This is why I am so passionate about changing my norms. I wanted to change the norm of what healthy is for me. I wanted to change the norm of what I look like. I wanted to change the normal condition for my skin and what my skin looks like, because I used to have terrible skin and I was breaking out all the time and I couldn't really find the answer to why this was happening. I wanted to change the norm of a lot of things, like what is normal. I was not really happy with what I considered normal because I know that our brain is wired to go back to normal. Every living being wants to go back to homeostasis, always. If you decide to change your life, if you one day you wake up and you decide to change your life and you decide to do everything differently starting from today or starting from tomorrow, and you start to apply a crazy amount of effort and you start doing everything differently, at one point you're going to get tired. Because if you apply radical effort or too much effort, which for your brain and for your body is too much, at one point your brain will tell you, hey, we need to slow down. Hey, let's go back to homeostasis. It feels good there. When you know that we always want to go back to normal, we always want to go back to homeostasis, and you cannot fool your body here or your brain. It will always want to go back to what feels good, homeostasis. You understand that the only way to change something is to internalize it, is to teach your brain that a different thing is normal now. What it means is that you need to do this new thing for so long that your brain believes you that now it's normal. When you do something for 2 weeks, when you do something for 2 months, God, when you do something for 1 year, your brain doesn't believe you. Look, I have a lot of stories like this. I quit sugar for 3 years. A few years ago, I decided to quit sugar, and I didn't eat any sugar for 3 years. And then I decided to try a cookie or some candy. And yes, in the first 3 seconds, it felt like it was extremely sweet and not even pleasant. In 1 hour, I was stuffing my face with that candy. I was already eating a cake and it felt normal. 1 year or even 3 years is nothing compared to 30 or 40 years of previous experience. Is nothing compared to those emotional memories of your childhood where you loved that thing. So the only way to change the way you do something in life is to teach your brain and to teach yourself that something else is normal, that a new condition, a new behavior, a new state of mind is now normal. If you want to change the way you speak English, because you don't really want to think about every single word when you speak, you just want to relax and think and speak. That's what everybody wants, right? You don't want to think about the shape of your vowels, about the meaning of every word, about the prepositions, about grammar. A lot of people want that. They want to speak English just like they speak their first language, where they don't have to think about how they're supposed to do it. They just do it effortlessly. And to do so, you need to understand that you can only do it when you delegated this job to your unconscious mind. You cannot do this consciously. You cannot focus on every word consciously and speak with ease. I'm not thinking about every word that I'm saying right now, but it feels easy and effortless, even though it didn't happen without effort. It took me a lot of effort and a lot of years of practice. But what I'm trying to say is that you want to, for example, if you want to change the way you speak English and you understand what you're saying wrong, what mistakes you're making, maybe you want to fix your vowels, maybe you want to change, or you want to replace the phrases that you say simply because you know nothing more, simply because this is all you know. You keep saying the same words, or you keep repeating the same phrases just because you always do so. But you know that they don't really sound natural. So what you need to do is you need to replace those phrases with more natural phrases. For example, somebody might have a habit of saying pay attention for, which is incorrect. You need to teach yourself that pay attention to is correct. It means the number of times you say pay attention to should be a lot more than the number of times you said pay attention for. Because if you have been saying pay attention for all your life, and now you decided to learn pay attention to, and you said it 100 times, it's not enough. It's not going to outnumber the incorrect version. You need to say it at least as many times as you said pay attention for, but ideally you want to outnumber pay attention for. Does that make sense? And then your brain will probably believe you. Yes, then it will become the new normal. And then when your brain decides, okay, we need to take some rest. We want to go back to homeostasis. We want to, go back to normal. It will know that a new thing is normal now, because this is what you always do, and this is what you've been doing for the last few years, or for the last few months. This is what is becoming normal right now. And then it feels effortless. So let's wrap it up. I'm going to give you some practical strategies to work with words, with fiction books, and some practical strategies to do the exercises if you want to internalize vocabulary. Now, when you know that the goal must be to internalize words, phrases, sentences, vowels, sounds, concepts, patterns, ways of thinking, articulation. You need to internalize those things. And when you know that now you want to internalize them, you need to be doing different things. Instead of trying to memorize lists of words, you're going to be doing very, very different things. The first thing that you want to do is you want to practice being attentive. Not only focused, but attentive as well. And to be honest, not a lot of people understand what it means to be focused. They sit down to do an exercise, and at the same time they get distracted by social media and calls and other people. No, when you focus, you choose to ignore all the other things. Here is what you do when it comes to practicing. And I say practicing, not learning. I don't talk about learning English here. We're talking about actively practicing it. How to internalize vocabulary. Because you need vocabulary to speak better. And not even better, but to sound more natural in English. If you are a community member, or if you have done any of my exercises, you know that I give you steps. Every exercise consists of steps. When you look at the instructions, you will see what result you want to achieve with this exercise. You will know where you need to arrive at the end. And then you will know what steps you need to take to get to this result. So what you need to do is you need to follow the steps, because what many people do is they want to go from step number 1 to step number 10. For example, I tell them, well, the exercise is listen to this audio or watch this video and summarize the main idea. And they think that it's enough to watch this video, and then they're supposed to immediately, miraculously summarize the main idea in beautiful English with 0 mistakes. But before you get to this final result, you need to follow steps. There are very specific steps to this exercise, and this algorithm will help you internalize this information and the skill. You also want to internalize the skill of making sense of information and the skill of dealing with information that you receive in the English language. Here's another important thing. When you internalize something, you stop thinking about it consciously. It becomes easy to you. And you always start internalizing things that are very small. You start with vowels, you start with words, you start with the things that feel easy. And you don't try to read the entire fiction book. First, you learn to work with a phrase, or maybe a quote, and then a paragraph, and then a page. And when you practice one specific vowel, for example, for a lot of people it's difficult to say the word walk, or talk. This is a difficult vowel for many non-native speakers. Or purpose, purple, or learn. This is another difficult vowel for many people. But once you have internalized it, you don't really think about it. You don't have to put in any conscious effort to say this word, to say words with this vowel. And when you have achieved that, you maintain that ease as you start learning other vowels. This is what's important. And a lot of people try to master all the vowels at once. They try to understand the entire video. They try to read the entire book. And for some reason, they think that doing more, reading more, watching more, learning more is better. It's not important how many hours you spend learning something, or how many books you've read, or how many exercises you've done. What matters is the result. How do you speak? What has it given you? What have you achieved with all those exercises? Because trust me, you can achieve a lot more by focusing on less. And lesson number 1 is to follow every step of the exercise. If you're not a community member, you can join today and see how exercises are organized. Instructions are always described in steps, so make sure you follow every step. And every step should feel like, yeah, I've done it, it's easy. And you move to the next step while maintaining that ease. Does that make sense? When it becomes easy, you easily carry it to the next stage. The next lesson is to work with less. Again, if you imagine a piece of paper and there's only one word written on that piece of paper, or let's talk business. Imagine a business presentation and you're looking at slides. If you see just one word on a slide, you can see the entire word. You see all of it. You can see the font. You can see the details of the font. You see everything. Right? And you understand what you're looking at. You understand the meaning of this word. Or maybe you don't understand the meaning of this word, but you're very aware of the fact that you see and understand what you're seeing. But if somebody wants to give you a lot of information, they will have to put a lot of words, a lot of text on this one slide. And if it's like a lot of information, then they will have to put this they will have to put a lot of text on the slide, and it's going to be in very small font, and you would have to struggle understanding and seeing every word on that slide, and you'll definitely not see every detail of every word, and you will feel like you do not have the time to go through that information. But if you see only one word on a slide, you feel like you have a lot of time to examine this word and to understand this information. But when you suddenly see a lot of text, you feel like you have to read it in the very little time that you have, that you're given to look at the slide, and you start hurrying and you start worrying, and it feels like you've seen a lot, but you saw nothing. It feels like you looked at a lot of information, but you saw nothing. And again, if you're familiar with the exercises that we do in the community of practice, you know that I am a big fan of working with less to achieve more, working with less content to achieve more. if we work with a video, we start with 20 seconds. And advanced students usually do no more than 3 minutes. So if you're somebody who has never done this exercise and you want to start with a 5-minute video, most likely you're going to fail. When we start reading out loud, we start with a 20-second piece. If you do, or with one paragraph. When we start reading out loud, we actually start with quotes, which is usually one sentence. When we start understanding thought chunks, we start with one word to understand the stress. Then we add another word to it. Then we work with a quote. Then we work with a paragraph. And then we can gradually add more sentences to this paragraph because when it feels easy to read one paragraph out loud, you can do one paragraph and one sentence. And then you can do one paragraph and 2 more sentences. And then eventually you can do 2 paragraphs and you maintain that ease. But if you try to read a page out loud, if you've never read anything out loud in English, it's going to feel like hell. You're going to be extremely tired and you're going to hate this exercise. The TED karaoke exercise, we also start with just 20 seconds, and 45 seconds is the absolute maximum. When you work with a video, you're going to learn a lot less from watching the entire Netflix show than if you concentrate and work with 1 minute of a video. It can be a Netflix episode. It can be an episode of a Netflix show. But you're going to be working with just 1 minute of this video, and you're going to learn a lot more. So working with less information, because your conscious mind can work with very little information. That it's productive when it works with little information, and your unconscious should be doing the rest. So you work with little information, but you give it your entire focus. You should study it with precision. You should understand what you're doing. Give it all your focus. And every time we work with lists of words, I also ask students to make lists of words that they paid attention to, that they liked, that they thought as important. But we always narrow down our lists down to 2 word combinations that are the most practical for us today. What are the 2 word combinations that you know that are so good that you can start using them today? They're so important and so useful that it would make all the sense in the world to start using them in your own speech today. Only 2. And yes, people worry that they're going to forget the other 15 that they paid attention to. When they have a list of words and it keeps growing, because the more you learn, the more words and the more phrases and the more sentences you want to learn, and you keep adding them to your list. I understand this frustration. I understand the worry. People worry that if they work with only 2 phrases, they're going to forget the rest. No, that's not the point. If you understand that your purpose is not to memorize words, because I don't believe that you're going to use all those words in a conversation tomorrow. I don't even believe that you're going to need these words in a conversation tomorrow or even next week. Yes, you liked them, they're useful, but I don't believe you're going to need them tomorrow or next week or during your next meeting. This is why you choose the 2 that you most likely need and you most likely will need to use during your next meeting. These are the 2 that you focus on, and you work with them deliberately, and you give this exercise your focused attention because you want to internalize these 2. And your conscious mind can focus on these 2. So what is happening as you work with these 2 is you are internalizing the principles of making sense of information. And this is what travels to your unconscious. When you work with only 2 phrases, you're learning to make sense of information. You're learning to work with vocabulary. You're learning to check the pronunciation. You're learning to check in with the source. You're learning to make decisions. You're learning to understand what matters. You're learning to understand the meaning of the word. You're learning to see the picture. You're learning to imagine the situation. You're learning a lot. You're learning the strategies to work with new words or to work with words that you know but you don't use. So you are internalizing the skill of reactivating some passive knowledge. And it's enough to be working with just 2 words, because as you work with 2, you're feeding your unconscious with a lot of useful information, and all this is being internalized. So the next time you look at a new phrase or a new word combination, you will know what to do a lot faster, because if you learn to be in the state of relaxed focus, you will delegate the work of making sense of information that you're looking at to your unconscious mind. And all you will need to do consciously is to read the word, understand the letters and the words in front of you so that you can read it correctly, so that you can say it correctly. And your unconscious will be able to instantly understand the relations between this new word that you're looking at and all the other words that you have experienced before. I hope I'm making sense. To wrap it up, follow every step of the exercise. Don't try to move from step 1 to step 10. I have a podcast episode which is titled All the Steps Between Hearing and Understanding. I talk about the same concept there because a lot of people want to hear and instantly understand, but there are actually 10 steps in between. Listen to this podcast episode. I'm talking about the same idea there, but relative to understanding native speakers when you listen to them, especially when you listen to fast speech. Number 2, work with less content. 30 seconds can be more than enough. 2 word combinations is more than plenty. And don't worry about forgetting all the other words on your list. You will not forget them. But as you need to cultivate this skill of making decisions for yourself. When you look at a list of 20 word combinations, you need to make a decision. Which 2 must I choose to practice today? Because the other 18, yes, they're nice, they look beautiful, but they're not practical. Which are the most useful for me today? You need to learn to make decisions. Okay, someone's calling me. I guess I need to answer the phone. Hang on a sec. Hello? Somebody dialed the wrong number, I guess. So we're about to finish anyway. I can't put this on hold, you know? As if it was a phone conversation. It's not a phone conversation. So learn to make decisions. Learn to take ownership and agency when it comes to your learning process. You make decisions. Which words you need today and tomorrow, which words you're going to learn. You make these decisions. So take ownership of this process. And don't worry about all the other words. You will learn them as well. But first, you need to train your unconscious mind by paying conscious, deliberate attention to the exercises that you do. It's not enough to pay conscious and deliberate attention to a Netflix episode, because when we watch a Netflix episode, we do quite the opposite. We're distracted, we're relaxed, and we don't pay our conscious, deliberate attention to every word that we're looking at. This is why when you do an exercise, your brain is doing a very different thing. You are being very concentrated. You're supposed to be focused and concentrated. When you work with just 1 minute of a video, you want to pay attention to every single sound and every single word and every single sentence, and you probably watch this 1 minute video back and forth until you really hear every single word and until you really understand how this connected speech works and how you can learn to do the same, how you can learn to speak as fast as they do. You don't do this work when you watch a Netflix show. It's also important to understand. But as you teach your conscious mind to be so focused, you're also teaching your unconscious mind to be deeply present. Do your exercises. Choose deliberate practice rather than doing something or watching Netflix from time to time. And because only deliberate practice can change what's normal. I'll speak to you in the next videos.